Welcome to the Business Clicks podcast, the podcast that interviews business owners to discuss their struggles, strategies, and successes with using the power of the internet to grow their business. We discuss the transition from brick and mortar growth strategies to digital alternatives. We provide new and exciting tactics each business can use to be successful in this new digital world. I'm your host, Adam Barbaro, and let's get stuck in. Welcome to this episode of the Business Click podcast. On this episode, I'm joined from Dean from TVD Media. How are you going, Dean?
Going great. How are you, Adam?
Good. Before we get stuck in, I want to ask you a quick question. What do you think will make a successful business in the future?
I suppose the best way I'll personally answer that is not only in the future, but also like in the past. I think it always comes down to attention. It's not usually the greatest products or services that kind of win businesses. It's usually being at the right time and at the right place. So how quickly can you increase your presence in front of your ideal businesses or business owners is probably the key. I think it's super easy nowadays compared to how it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, but it still definitely has those challenges.
Yeah, definitely. Attention from your ideal customers, right? Just being out of it.
Yes, exactly. Whether you are, a social media agency or videographer or photographer, how quickly can you get to market and then be in front of those ideal customers and clients at the right time? Because I think timing is super important.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's basically how they describe market fit, right? It's being in the right place, the right time with the right product in front of the right people, and they call that market fit. Everything will just align and things all of a sudden seem to just flow organically. But it's really all these other things just sort of fell into line, or you've helped them go into line into the point where things feel like they're going organically, but those steps had to be done correctly in order to get you to that point, or you had to have a lot of luck on your side.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose, like they say, everything looks like an overnight success, but it's all those, building blocks and building those relationships and making sure your product and service is one of the best in the industries and kind of are known when it comes to people thinking about you when it's the right time.
Yeah, definitely. Tell us a bit about TVD Media and sort of what you specialize in and how you got started.
Yeah, sure. So TVD Media started as the virtual degree, essentially doing a lot of virtual experiences for university campuses. And during that time, about 5 years ago when we first started, we had a lot of work in that space, so campuses around Australia, just doing virtual reality, which was great. But it kind of came to the conclusion that we were more ambitious with our kind of ideas of where we saw that virtual reality than actually what the market needed. And, I definitely fall into that boat of, ideas, but it means nothing unless you kind of execute. And, over the years, I came to the conclusion that there's no point of kind of reinventing the wheel. Find a business out there that's in your category that you like and admire, and improve your services and products by 5 to 10%, and then rinse and repeat. So during that time, we came to the conclusion that there is an application and appetite for virtual reality, but not to the level of kind of what I had ambitions for. I think it will eventually get to that stage, but you kind of have to keep it simple. So we kind of went back to like, okay, great. Virtual reality is one service of our business. What else can we add on? So this is where the conversation came up. Like, hey, we need the bread and butter of photography for businesses, which can add value, and kind of building those services beyond just VR, like video or like photography, and kind of all working hand to hand, solving those creative solutions for businesses.
Yeah, brilliant. I agree with what you said there. I know when I first met you, you were definitely big in the VR sort of space in terms of doing that for organizations. And I agree with you. I think maybe you were too early to the game rather than it wasn't like the product or anything. It was just that VR hasn't quite sunken in yet. But I think that experience that you have in that realm will be highly beneficial in 5 years from now when VR is very much more saturated in our I think, everyday lives and marketplace. I think we'll see a bit of a change there in terms of how many organizations are integrating into different components of, I guess, showcasing their business or market.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I think it gave, because the business is my twin brother and myself, so Daniel and I, it gave us that great foundation of rejection early on in our business. And I think in order to be a business owner, you need to have that tough skin. So when we went out to pitch for these businesses and say, hey, we have this idea of this cool virtual reality idea, a lot of them was essentially all of it was just education. And that's tough to kind of build a business on if you're in the business of education, that's great, but we're in the business of selling, virtual experiences. So a lot of the time was like, hey, educate them about what virtual reality is, what can it do? And it's a tough sell because it's new, and a lot of these many people don't want to spend a lot of money on new ideas. They understand video, they understand photos, and it's kind of like a safe bet. No one's ever going to question running an ad or creating a bus ad or an ad in a shopping center or a cinema. No one's going to be like, are you sure? But when it comes to innovative stuff, there's only a handful of A-listed businesses that kind of will dedicate a budget towards ideas like that.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things popping into my mind straight away, which is I wonder if have you read The Blue Ocean Strategy?
No, I haven't. No.
So that's something really interesting that I think you'd find really fascinating, and that's basically the Blue Ocean Strategy is a concept based on, if you can think of an ocean, right? And if you think of sharks, so the business owners fighting for the market share, being the fish, and obviously being a lot of sharks and a lot of fish, you're going to end up with a red ocean. A lot of sharks are chewing at those fish, a lot of blood everywhere, and they're all fighting over the same fish. The concept of the Blue Ocean Strategy, I think you can see where I'm going, is that it's an empty ocean. There's plenty of fish and there's no sharks, yet they're eating at those fish. And the concept is that if you're able to get into a blue ocean and you're able to create real products in that area, what they've found is, with the research, the people that wrote the book, is that those people that find blue oceans and are able to create a market there are more often than not able to hold that market and grow it. Even once other than sharks come and join them in that market, they're able to withhold and hold on to that market share percentage. So as the market grows, more often than not, they're still, majority 70% holders of this market that started out as a very small, maybe a $1 million market, really not anything that you could build a large business of. But as it grew into a $100 million market, they find that these same businesses are still there with the same proportion of market share because they were the early adopters.
That's very interesting. You mentioned that, because the last quarter of this year has been the busiest year of our business, and a lot of it kind of came down to the people that I met a couple of years ago, and they remembered when the first day they reached out to me like, "Hey Dean, are you still doing virtual reality experiences? I remember that you did something like that." And now it's like, yeah, absolutely, we still do, but we also have these other services that we also can help with. So it's more of a end-to-end. We can help with video or photos and app builds. So it's interesting how that buzzword of virtual reality or augmented reality, all these things that are kind of, they're present, but also they're more future-oriented, like you mentioned, 5, 10, 15 years. It creates like a memory point, which is, now it's actually working great for us.
Yeah, definitely. I think that would probably, more than you maybe realize, or maybe you do realize, I'm not sure, that how much of an impact that it would have actually had in terms of helping you be remembered by these people long term, years to come. Hey, there was Dean. He was that VR guy, and then all of a sudden, maybe you'll start getting these clients maybe repeating, just because you became you. And it's just like any good Facebook ad or whatever, for example, right? If we're doing a good Facebook ad these days, it's about coming up with a good hook or a good angle for people to be able to stop scrolling and actually grab their attention. And I think a lot of businesses can do that in how they offer their products or services by offering some sort of angle, which then separates you.
Yes, absolutely. And I suppose another takeaway that I'm kind of thinking about now is we learned how to keep it simple. I think all business owners have the tunnel vision of their product and service, and I definitely have that when it comes to virtual reality. And essentially, people they don't really want to be educated beyond a couple of minutes. It's not there. It's not in their line of work to sit down and learn something. They kind of want to know as simple as possible, and how can it help me now, and how can we implement this? If you kind of have to tell them how it works, the intricacy, like for example, like you and I are both in the video and photography space, you and I can speak about lenses till we get blue in the face, but the average person will probably roll their eyes and they couldn't care less, right? So I think that's the kind of the biggest thing that I learned from, is like majority of people just don't care. It's, there's like, how can X products or services help their businesses with an outcome?
Yeah.
Not necessarily our perspective of it.
Definitely. The outcome, something that I do, and I do a lot of strategy with organizations recently. And what I've been doing more and more of is basically helping them a lot with the mindset and the messaging around being able to transform this concept to what you just said of getting in the mind of the customer, being customer focused with the messaging on how you're creating it. And something that you just reminded me of as you're saying that is, we can talk, you can get very caught up in what you're actually selling, the product. And you can start talking about these products until you're blue in the face and how good and what they're going to do. And you know what I mean? And there's a line that says, features tell, benefits sell. And it's about changing your mindset and to stop talking about the features that you're going to provide, which is something that you're interested in because you're interested in that topic, and switching your mindset to something that is benefits, is problem to solution focused, that someone can actually, connect with as a business or even just as a consumer and say, yeah, that's actually what I'm looking for. They don't care what sort of extra features it has. That just becomes a comparison game between one business or one product and another. Whereas as soon as you get into the customer focus, emotional messaging, that is immediately how you start connecting with people on a deeper level and actually start getting people to act with more impulsivity because you're actually connecting on an emotion, which is how we act. It's the red brain versus green brain. A lot of people actually refer to it as.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely couldn't say that better myself. And it's interesting you say that. This year, I've kind of onboarded a personal philosophy of every single conversation I have with a new client or even a previous client is why. It always starts with why, because a solution is a solution, but only makes sense for that. It has to make sense for the business. So just this week, we had a couple of builders call us and say, hey, we need some photos for our project. I'm like, fantastic, that's great. I can ask, why do you need this for? And they came back and said, hey, we don't have no social media presence at the moment. We have no website. We've been in business for 15 years. And, these kind of, in my head, like, okay, so it's a business that's been around for 15 years, which is great because the majority of businesses at that stage, it's pretty tough to survive even the first year of 90% failure rate. So, okay, they've been in business for 15 years, no social media presence. So the majority of the business is probably referral based, which is fantastic. And now they kind of want to get to that next level. Now, there's no point of just, contacting a photographer or videographer just to shoot content. It has to make sense why. Where's this content going to go? Do they have a website? How does the Instagram look? How does the Facebook look? How does the LinkedIn look? So all these questions are kind of needed. And I think that also comes from, one, having confidence in my business, also confidence as an individual to ask that question.
Definitely. I think I 100% agree with you. And I think it also comes, particularly someone who has a background in content, like we do. It's not just wanting to create the content, it's actually wanting to help the business. And I think I see too many videographers, people that we used to stand out as in competition and they would just want to, you could see they just wanted to sell the great video. But the video without any sort of strategy or good tactics and where it fits in and any sort of funnel and any sort of understanding about how that actually fits in with the sales process and understanding the customer journey, you're doing a huge disservice to the business. And in fact, you're doing a disservice to your own industry, because what's going to happen is those, builders, for example, and I can give you a similar story, which I will in a sec, with a plumber, and they'll use your services, they'll get a killer video, but if they have no understanding of how to actually leverage that content, how to actually leverage those creative to actually drive business, then it's nothing. A video by itself is useless. It's how you actually leverage that digital asset into something that's going to, bring you recurring business is where the magic happens. So I think you truly do a disservice to your customers by just coming out and just saying, yeah, I can make you a video, I can give you photos, here's my invoice, great, pay it, and not giving them any sort of understanding or assistance in making sure that they're getting a great ROI off those assets. I can give you a story from a plumber only a couple of weeks ago, and they'd contact me through some that I'd done work with, and with that person I'd worked with, what obviously they left out is we'd done a large amount of strategy beforehand in terms of finding their ideal customer, finding the exact platforms where their attention of these customer is, and what messaging they're going to respond to most effectively. Unfortunately, all they told their friend, this plumber that came to me, was, "Oh, Adam did this great piece of content, set us up, and we got had all these leads coming in." But so the plumber came to me and said, "Oh, I'd love, we want to do some videos." And I said, "Great, have you got, what's your sort of plan at the moment? Like, what are you thinking of doing?" She goes, "Oh, I just wanted to share it on my Facebook page." And I was like, "Oh, have you got a big Facebook following?" "No, we've got 12 people." And I said, "Yeah, okay. Well, maybe we should sit down and talk a bit about a strategy about maybe running some ads or to targeted groups or wherever your ideal customers sit, and come up with a bit of a plan around that." And she thought I was trying to upsell her, and it didn't really go anywhere because I didn't want to just do a video for her. I wasn't just going to come in, get her to spend a couple $1,000s on creating these cool promo videos and testimonials just for them not to be able to use it with any sort of larger strategy, not to be able to have any sort of funnel or customer journey set up for her customers that she could actually get an ROI off it. And there is definitely a disconnect there.
It's interesting. That's exactly right, Adam. And it's interesting. A lot of the creative people in the creative industries, they don't view it that way. Like, for example, an accountant that kind of has a deep dive of a business and can literally see the financial underbelly of all businesses, and they kind of take that approach like, "Hey, you're kind of lacking in these areas. Let's recommend this." But a lot of people in our field, they kind of take that selfish approach, like, my solution is the only solution. And that may be definitely the case, but I think a lot of people, when they kind of have that conversation, and that's why it's great when a business looks to onboard a creative person, they go to a couple of people and they have those chats. And I always recommend it. Hey, don't, settle on one quote or one conversation. Have many conversations and kind of gather and see what kind of is the best fit for your business. Because they can see, like you mentioned, one photographer, videographer, like, you know what, all you need 20 photos and that's it, and we'll just put them on your Instagram. But does that really make sense? Like, I can give you another example. An architectural firm had great social media presence. They're doing great on all those fronts. But the biggest struggle they had was in the proposal stage when they were pitching clients. And I'm like, "Hey, can I see your proposal of what you're sending out there? How does this look like?" And they showed me what they kind of send to a potential client. And that's where they had a bigger struggle, because a lot of the time they weren't showing their point of differences. It was all kind of like text-based and quite boring visually. So we kind of came up with a solution like, "Hey, we can use what you have now, the content that you've shot, like the videos, photos, but come with a more better approach to kind of showcase the point of differences in a creative way." So that could be with a little bit of video showcases, testimonials, images, and that was their pain. That was where they needed help with. If I could just went off just from one perspective, like, "Hey, you just need better quality photos or better quality imagery," that's not really solving their problem. Like, yeah, they may be happy for that, but they'll probably never use me again. I personally don't want to build a business like that. I wanted someone to be similar to the approach of an accountant that kind of solves many problems and sees the business as everything instead of just like singular vision.
Yeah, definitely. One of my previous podcast guests talked a lot about his business was built off creating advocates for his business, for his business that then created referrals through that. And that's what his main focus was. And he sort of talked a bit about that he wasn't doing marketing. And I sort of disagreed with him and said, I think that is marketing 100%. Marketing is not just what you're putting out online. Marketing is not just what pamphlets you're delivering or what bus stops you're putting an ad on. Marketing is everything from however your customer interacts with your business. That is marketing if you're doing it correctly. That's a component that you can look at, that you can address someone's concerns, you can nurture them through a nurture sequence to solve their problems in the most frictionless, customer-focused way possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm interesting. As you've made that change in your business, how have you adopted any sort of different strategies or implemented different strategies or tactics for yourself in making that change from VR into other aspects that are focusing more on photography and videography? Did you change your messaging? Did you change your approach? What changed in your business marketing for your business to approach different customers, and how did that pivot sort of happen?
I think it wasn't any like one fundamental thing. I think it was a gradual thing. I think, as you kind of mature in your business, you mature as an individual, have more confidence in your skills and your personal belief. That's a super important thing. And then kind of coming to I think having confidence in yourself is super important, because essentially if you kind of are not at that stage where you want to collaborate with other photographers, or you think they're your competition, like you mentioned before, that's going to be a massive hurdle to overcome. And to be honest, in the early stages of my business, that's how I kind of felt like, hey, that I don't want to speak to other photographers or videographers. They're my competition. And it's similar to like, lawyers. There's 50 types of lawyers, IP lawyers, family lawyers, there's just like photographers and videographers. We all have our own niche and specialty and clients we want to work with. So that's that's been a really powerful thing, or is the power of collaboration, especially when it comes to drones or videography. We have great suppliers that we work for hand to hand, because I personally know what my skill sets are as an individual in a business, and I don't want to pause my business and just say, let me go learn drone work or videography for the next 3 months and add it to my business, when you can just find great suppliers out there, great individuals that have the same mindset as you. You can work together, and you empower their clients and they empower your clients. End of the day, everyone wins.
Yeah, definitely. So you basically took on a bit of I like to say a bit of an infinite mindset approach, in terms of you thought, okay, we're going to make this shift, and I know where we sit in the field, and we're going to think of this with more abundance and say, that's fine. One way of our ability to grow our business in these sectors is to work with people that aren't directly in competition with us, that have the similar customers, that are looking for similar results, but are doing different aspects of our I guess submarket. Is that correct?
Yes, well, exactly. And I think I'll definitely admit this now. It comes down to insecurity. If you kind of feel a particular way of an individual, that's a reflection on you. Those photos are better. That individual is more confident, and that individual dresses a bit better. That's a reflection on how you feel internally. And I feel like until you overcome those internal battles of yourself, there's always going to be that feeling that you created in your mind. Like you said a couple of minutes ago about mindset, it's super important. But until you kind of realize that, you don't realize how important it is.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I'll definitely admit as well. The ability to understand, particularly as a business owner, and that's probably my biggest growth point of the last couple of years. I would say not only of these, different areas of marketing, understanding, customer journey and funnels and everything better, but understanding my own mindset and how my own belief systems fit in with how I put myself out there, and how that directly impacts my business and my ability to adapt to change, or to take on, like you said, partners that, someone who would be in quite a fixed mindset would be very, very worried about working with those people, thinking that they're going to take, these certain number of jobs out there. Whereas when you start being more, I guess, open and generous, all of a sudden these different sources of income and work and leads come in, and it simply came from your ability to, I guess, open yourself up a bit and realize that it's not about competition. It's about solving someone's problem and being very good at doing that.
Absolutely. And I think probably if I could go back or offer a bit of advice for new businesses now, that would probably be the best thing. Find an industry or a sector of photography or any type of content that you enjoy. I think that's very important, and become the best at it, and everything else will kind of fall into place. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Focus on yourself. There's only so much time in the day. It's like, become the best version as a business owner and individual, and your product and service, and everything else will follow.
Brilliant. I love that. And I think I'll back that up with a Gary Vee quote where he says, you have to learn to suck and you have to learn to lose and you have to learn to love losing. Where he basically makes the idea that you love the process, be in love with the process, not the end goal. And these losses won't mean anything to you because it's just a step in the process where you're going to continue to work it out. I want to thank you for joining me today, Dean. If someone wanted to reach out to TVD Media, where would you send them?
You can find us across all platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram. Our website is tvd.media. Searching tvd.media on Google, LinkedIn, pretty much across the whole social media presence.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining me. That is this episode of the Business Clicks podcast. I'm your host, Adam Barbro. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Business Clicks podcast.